Ukraine and Russia, Zelensky and Putin, they've all got competition for the top of the mind story for now, at least in India for us. Because right now we are getting fixated, our attention is being shifted from Ukraine and Russia onto Uttar Pradesh elections, which is now heading for its last phase of voting. And in a few days, there will be results. Now, many of you may have been wondering how come there was no national interest video this weekend. Now, there was no national interest video because there was no national interest this weekend. Occasionally, as my old readers might know, particularly during elections, I travel through poll-bound regions and I write an occasional series called Writings on the Wall. Now, what is Writings on the Wall? Writings on the Wall is it's a metaphor that's grown out of my travels over the past 25, 30 years. And these are travels which have taught me that if you want to know what's really happening in India, how are Indians thinking, how are different regions, different ethnicities, different diversities thinking and looking at life and politics. Because in democracy, all political decisions come out of your lived experiences of this generation and past generations as well, and also their expectations of the future. So I find a lot of that is literally written on the walls. Sometimes it can be graffiti, sometimes it can be an absence of walls. Our first election travel in Bihar, for example, in 2005, when we went out of nearly 2 decades of Lalu Yadav, we found there were hardly any walls because most of the countryside was kacha or thatched. But wherever there was something, there was a signboard, there was a placard. Usually people found trees to hang these onto or the odd electricity pole to hang these onto. They were selling education. They were selling English medium primary school education. So you could see that there was a change coming up. And then in subsequent election travels, again, other discoveries were made because the next time you saw walls coming up, and on the walls again, now this time there was education, but this was JEE, NEET, medical admission test. Also it was UPSC, etc., IITs. Then going ahead, we also made a discovery that in this next election under Nitish Kumar, these were the good productive terms of Nitish Kumar, we found branded goods being sold, and the metaphor we then picked up was branded underwear being sold. So this was a state where most people on our first visit had no footwear in election meetings. Most people would walk barefooted. Now that has changed. People had chappals, even if cheap Chinese chappals or Hawaii chappals as those are called. And on the walls, you had branded underwear being sold. So we use that also as an indication that people were moving up the aspirational ladder. Now we've done similar travels across the country, and this time I've spent 6 days traveling through Eastern UP. Eastern UP, which was going through the last 2 phases of polling. This is a very important region. So what is it that we discover? What is it that the walls are telling us? As I told you, on the walls you can have graffiti, you can have advertising, you can have skylines. For example, our assembly election trip in Gujarat in 2012, we figured what I noticed as writings on the wall was the skyline of low-level factories across many parts of Gujarat. And you could see that the state was changing compared to how it was in the past. There can be fences. In Pakistan, I found on one of my travels, the metaphor was that almost everything had barbed wire fence, not just barbed wire fence, but concertina fence. So you could see that became an indication that Pakistan was becoming a national security state, because writings on the wall is not confined just to India. Sometimes it takes us to neighboring countries as well. So in this case, in the case of Eastern UP, let me say, the first writing on the wall that we figured was a bull. I'm not using bull in terms of many of these sayings and metaphors that have arisen out of the expression bull. This is bullshit. They said, don't give me this bull. Not like that. Bull in the China shop. Not like that. It was real bull. Literally a bull. A solitary one. So as we turned under Uttaranchal Highway, Uttaranchal Expressway to go towards Balia to watch elections, the campaigning, the mood there, And we looked up, suddenly we found a big bull, black and white bull with big black and white patches with a hump this high, standing about 200 feet higher on the interchange of the expressway, looking down on us, sort of out of curiosity, because it saw several cars pass by suddenly, maybe, or maybe it was just bored there, right? But that immediately reminded you that something is going on in Uttar Pradesh countryside that is about bulls and cows. And as we got down talking to people, one thing that we heard about a great deal was chutta sant, or chutta janwar, which means a vagrant bull or vagrant cattle. Now, what's happened is, because of this aggressive cow protection, Uttar Pradesh always had an anti-cow slaughter law. But this time, for the past 5 years under Yogi, this has been enforced very sternly. Law has been strengthened. It's also been targeted in most ways towards a community, that's a Muslim community. It has also killed cattle trade. So what do farmers do when their cows stop giving milk or stop producing calves? Because for the farmer, a cow, like a buffalo, is an economic investment. It's not a tribute paid to religion. It's not a tribute paid at a temple. It's an economic investment. So how can you keep on feeding an animal that size after that animal has stopped yielding all economic benefit? In the past, the farmers sold it. Now cattle trade is almost over, particularly for cows and bulls. And that is why all that the farmer does is push the animal out of their area. So the animal goes to the neighboring field where it's again pushed, from where it's again pushed, and then it goes across the fields, because after all, poor animal has to fill its belly. Poor animal has to fill its belly. So because nobody is feeding it, it picks up whatever it can from wherever it can. Nobody wants to kill it. Nobody wants to beat it, because most people are Hindus. They don't particularly want to harm a cow. So these cows, stray cows, then become a menace for everybody. So they land up everywhere, in the neighbor's farm, in the cities, into people's kitchen gardens, at garbage heaps. You can see clumps of them eating garbage or foraging from garbage. And occasionally a bull also ends up at an expressway interchange. That is what we saw just now. Now, what's happened as a result of this is that in the past 5 years back, cow slaughter or banning cow slaughter was a big issue for the BJP. Now, no BJP leader in this election campaign is talking about banning cow slaughter or complaining that people of a particular community, that is Muslims, steal other people's cows and slaughter them. On the other hand, the discourse has now completely shifted. Discourse has shifted from cow protection to stray cow menace. And that is what even BJP leaders are now answering. So in 5 years now, if cow protection, cow slaughter have lost their oomph, and they've been replaced by stray cow menace, to the extent that even Yogi Adityanath now is promising a monthly allowance or a monthly dole to those having cows which have stopped yielding. It tells you how politics is changed. That's why we say that lone bull standing on top of the interchange on that elevated expressway is also a writing on the wall, because it tells us what's happening with Uttar Pradesh's politics. Now, how important was this issue in the past? In 2014, towards the later stages of the campaign, Narendra Modi, when he was campaigning to be Prime Minister for the first time, I think it happened in Haryana, he used the expression pink revolution. And he said pink revolution is what we need in India. What was that? That was a hint that meat exports, there is a lot of meat export taking place. All of that, or a bulk of that, is what is called as beef export, although it's not beef as in cows, it's beef as in buffaloes. Some people also prefer to call it buff instead of beef. But the fact is that he made a call against meat exports in the course of time. That was 2014. In 8 years since then, meat exports from India haven't gone down that much. Meat exports have followed the normal pattern. Last year, for example, they might have gone down a little bit because the demand from Vietnam had come down for some reason. Otherwise, meat exports from India, buffalo meat exports from India, have remained in the $3.5 billion, $4 billion per year ballpark. So meat exports or meat industry have not been affected to that extent. On the other hand, the trade in non-yielding cows has now come to a standstill. In the process, they were bought by traders. God knows where they took them. Maybe they were taken to Bangladesh. Maybe they were taken to states of India where beef eating is not banned. The northeastern tribal states, for example, beef is an essential meat in those areas. In Goa, in many other parts of the country, Kerala also. So cows then, unyielding cows were taken somewhere there, and they were again an economic asset for the farmer because the farmer sold an unyielding cow and got some money. Today that can't be done in Uttar Pradesh, and that is why they are floating everywhere, and that's why what was then a campaign asset, an attack on pink revolution, an attack on cow slaughter has now become a defensive thing for the BJP. No, it is not to say that this is a stray cow election. This is not to say just that the stray cows will determine the outcome of this election, but this has become an issue. But most important, even more importantly, this has taken away a campaign plank from the BJP because the calls to ban cow slaughter, the calls to act sternly against cattle rustling, these are code words for calls against the Muslim community. So that is now gone. That's become a liability. That's a big change. Post 1989, we keep saying that Indian politics has had a tussle. That tussle is, can you use religion to reunite what caste divided? Or can you use caste to divide what religion united? 1989 onwards, using Ayodhya, Mr. Advani started this, and then Narendra Modi took it to another level. First with the temple movement, then with Gujarat, then with aggressive Hindu nationalism, which Narendra Modi came up with. The BJP very successfully used religion to unite, to reunite what caste had divided. The best example of that is 2019 elections in Uttar Pradesh, where the BJP got more than 50% of the vote. It's rare for any party to get 50% of the vote. It doesn't often happen. And that happened because BJP's own formula. BJP can win in Uttar Pradesh, in fact, most parts of the country, except maybe West Bengal among major states, if it gets more than 50% of the Hindu vote. Remember, in Uttar Pradesh, if you look at upper castes who are steadfastly with the BJP even now, in fact, in our tribals, we did not find anybody from the upper castes, that is Brahmins, Thakurs, Baniyas, even Brahmins who are supposed to be aggrieved, saying that they will vote against the BJP. So that vote base for the BJP is totally intact. But for BJP to get to 50% of the Hindu vote, from this about 15% of the overall vote, or which will become about 20% of the Hindu vote, they need a lot of the other castes. They need non-Jatav Dalits, non-Jatav because Jatavs still seem pretty much committed to Mayawati, as we saw her at Mayawati's rallies, lots of people, very boisterous. That loyalty is intact. But non-Jatavs are the ones that BJP has been attracting to itself. It got quite a bit of that vote in 2017 state elections. In 2019 parliament elections, it aced that vote. And the same thing applies to the non-Yadav OBCs. Now, Yadavs will be 13, 14, 15% depending on how you count in UP. But non-Yadav OBCs are the rest, which is about 35%. So if about 50%, more than 50% in UP are OBCs, just over 50%, 2/3 of them are non-Yadavs. Those are the ones, again, that BJP aced in 2019. That was also a vote bank for the other side, for the caste-based parties, which the BJP breached in 2017 in state elections. Now we are getting indications that some of that is going away, in the sense that some of that is again being determined by caste interests, loyalties, because day-to-day problems have come back, and that heady brew of Hindu nationalism, aspiration that Modi ji will take the country, Modi ji and Yogi ji, double engine Sarkar will take the country and the state in a completely different direction, that has lost energy, because over the past few years, people have suffered gravely. So as we travel through Uttar Pradesh, we went to Sonbhadra. Sonbhadra is one of the poorest parts of Uttar Pradesh. It is not the poorest, surprisingly, because if you go around there, you wonder what does the poorest part of UP look like. But then the poorest district of UP is also the poorest and the least developed, the most underdeveloped district in all of India. That is Shravasti. That is generally about 400 kilometers north of Sonbhadra. Sonbhadra is a peculiar district. It's in the southeast of UP. Please see it on the map. It's in the southeast of UP. It borders Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and Madhya Pradesh like that. So you can understand that this is now bordering the mineral bearing states of the country. Sonbhadra also is a heavy mineral bearing state. It also has big projects, Rihand Dam, for example, hydroelectric projects. It has many thermal plants. Singrauli is next door. It is sort of the home of earlier Indian thermal power production. So it has a lot of industry, and maybe that distorts the figures. But the district is very poor. 40% of the district is tribal. It's also a district which has an MP from Apna Dal, Sonelal Group, which is BJP's ally, Anupriya Patel's party. Three of its four MLAs, existing MLAs, sitting MLAs in the outgoing assembly, are also from the BJP. It's important enough for Narendra Modi to come and make a stop here that we did. But we found, first of all, that his crowd, while the crowd was there, maybe about 10-12,000 people, they were not really enthusiastic. They were not responding, barring those in the front couple of rows. But those are party people, as you know. He also kept his message very subdued. There was no Hindu-Muslim, there was no Pakistan. On the other hand, he talked about his achievement in bringing people back, young people back from Ukraine, from the war. He talked about vaccinations. He talked also again and again about sending free grain to people. And he used first person I. I have sent free grain to all of you, जिससे कि मेरा कोई भाई बहन भूखा ना रह पाए, so that nobody goes hungry. So he's also sort of lowered his proposition to full bellies, to keeping people's bellies filled. Surprisingly, there was no real great promise of revolutionizing the economy, etc., etc. And similarly, the response from the crowd was very muted. In fact, it is something that we used to see in the very distant past when people started walking away as Mrs. Gandhi, Indira Gandhi, would start speaking, because she would collect huge crowds those days. But again, people will come, get their darshan and start walking away. We saw that happening now in Modi's rallies, which is unusual. So either people have heard that message many times before, or maybe at this point, people are hurting and tiring as a result of all this. I suspect, and that is the indication on the writings on the wall, that caste is coming back in some way. So other determinants of identity are coming back, instead of just one Hindu nationalism which overrode everything. So caste is back, my personal fate is back, joblessness. So what is the new caste, new nationalism, new Hindutva, new religion in Uttar Pradesh now, particularly Uttar Pradesh? It is joblessness. All of this translates into one word, joblessness. And as we discover in village after village after village. So we go to a Dalit Basti in a village called Genduria, not far from Sonbhadra, as you come from Sonbhadra towards Varanasi on the state highway. And we find that in a clump of about 50 mostly kacha huts of Dalits, these are mostly Yadav, not one young person has a job. Most of them have some education. They are literate. Most of them have some education, some, in fact, many are intermediate pass. Intermediate means class 12, and yet don't have a job. Those who were jobless 7 years ago are still jobless. I say 7 years ago because that is when 2014 Narendra Modi's BJP came to power with a full majority in Delhi. 2017 BJP came into power with an overwhelming majority in Uttar Pradesh as well. The fact is, those who were jobless 7 years ago, even 10 years ago, are still jobless. This is an unusual version of CutTheClutter this weekend, a special version of CutTheClutter, where I am using my travels, where I am using details from these writings on the wall trip to tell you about what's changing with politics. I will share a couple of videos with you. Maybe you will watch only a few seconds of it while we speak, but I will share the full link so you can go to that with the description. So listen to this man called Panchmukhi Sonkar. The man has been jobless for 8-10 years. A couple of times he's tried to go away. He's a Dalit. He's got intermediate education. he's gone away, and even for his education, he sold vegetables on by the roadside to earn a little money so he could pay for his education. He's gone to Goa for small jobs. He worked in the Colgate factory doing some laborer's job. Then he worked in a shop that mends punctures in automobile tires, but he lost all that. He's come back, and all he does, like everybody else around this, we collect this group of people, and they all have the same story. In fact, I asked for a show of hands. How many of you are educated? A lot, most of the hands go up. How many of you have a job? How many of you have a job? No hand goes up, because all they are doing right now is menial labor, which is carrying bricks and mortar, either at construction sites or at brick kilns. So they are not people right now who are so impressed by the larger slogans of nationalism, Hindutva, Hindu Muslim, etc., etc. They are coming back. They are today being driven a lot more by their economic realities. As you've heard, Panchmukhi, Sonkar, also listen to Chandan Kumar. Chandan Kumar is also a very interesting case study. He studied, he worked on the side to pay for his studies. He wanted to be at least a lab technician, a path lab technician. Path labs are having a boom now with COVID, etc. There's so much testing going on. He went to Varanasi to a college to get his diploma. He paid 80,000 rupees, again worked on the side to pay for that, very poor Dalit family. Came back with his diploma, and then realized the government says they don't recognize the diploma. So he cannot get a government job, because if his diploma was recognized, he could get a government job and he would also get the benefit of reservation. But he doesn't get that. He's now working at a local private hospital, which doesn't mind whether his diploma is recognized or not. He gets 8 to 10,000 rupees a month. And I asked him, what else can you do now? And he says, look, I now want to work 2 shifts a day, that is 2 8-hour shifts a day. So at least I can increase my income and maybe have my diploma upgraded in such a way, or pass some other exams to have a recognized diploma. But once again, the senses of desperation and unhappiness. Similarly, we stopped to a village called Churi, again somewhere down the same highway. Again, now this is an OBC clump. Most people are Maurya, Kushwaha, Kohri, Kurmi. This is the larger non-Yadav OBC group. These are people who had voted for the BJP in large numbers. Now, everybody who asks says, yes, I voted for BJP. Who will you vote for this time? They are not saying we'll vote for SP or anybody. They are saying we are thinking this time. So you don't get that answer readily from people who are saying, and these are from OBCs, that they voted BJP, saying that this time again we'll vote for BJP. That is interesting, because for all of them help us arrive at the same point, that joblessness is the new caste or religion, and bekari, that means to be unemployed, is the new identity. And this identity, unfortunately, this awful identity cuts across all conventional ones, that is caste, religion, nationalism, etc., etc., etc. Talk is all about jobs, jobs, jobs. And we see it also when we go to Balia at a place called Nagra, and we see Akhilesh Yadav's rally. Once again, watch a clip of the rally, and then I will share a full clip also with you separately. See how many placards are there. Almost every placard has a grievance about some set of jobs or recruitments. There is police recruitment that was made in 2017 that Yogi government set aside, but those jobs have not been given. There are teachers recruitments, and we know many problems with teachers recruitment exams in UP, and those exams have been postponed, reheld, they've been leakages, and there are many problems. So if you see the energy in this public meeting, which is rare these days in election meetings, I haven't seen this for some time, not since we saw some of Lalu's rallies and Lalu's good days, right? Or good moments in Lalu's politics. But you see this energy, most of it is coming from this frustration over not getting jobs. Of course, we can also see how the BJP is responding to it. They are responding to it. They've also realized that this is a straight fight between BJP and SP. So they are attacking SP on Parivarvad. So we do meet Akhilesh Yadav, who says, look, you accuse us of Parivarvad, of dynastic politics. It's okay if you have all the Scindia clan and Jitin Prasada and everybody else in the BJP, but also he reminds us something that probably we didn't even know. He says even Yogi Adityanath became the head of his mutt only because his mama, his maternal uncle, was the earlier chief. So he also inherited it. So why Parivarvad is okay for him and not for us. And it doesn't seem right now that Parivarvad is working so much for or against anybody. What is working against SP and for the BJP is in fact law and order. So one thing that people talk about positively for the Yogi government and for the BJP, particularly people of the upper caste and a lot of the Hindus, not Muslims, a lot of the Hindus, which is that he has improved law and order a great deal in the state. Because the fact is that he might have gone selectively after Muslim run mafias or Muslim mafiosi, or he might have gone selectively after Yadav mafiosi. But the fact is, those mafiosi did exist and he has gone after them, and that is something that brings the BJP a great deal of goodwill. And if they are able to go over the hump this time, it will be mainly because of popular perception that law and order is improved in a state which was seen to be very lawless in the past, and that's a liability that Samajwadi Party and Akhilesh carry from the past. Now the BJP knows this. That's why at BJP rallies, one leading chant is Bulldozer Baba Zindabad, Bulldozer Baba Jai Shri Ram. So that is a reference to Yogi Adityanath taking the bulldozer to what his government sees as illegally cornered properties or properties of those who might have been indulging in riots or crime. Now that has been employed selectively. So Mayawati, who we meet, says, look, have you ever seen the hammer or a bulldozer being taken to a non-Muslim property? These are all targeted at Muslim properties. But the fact is, that's as far as it goes, because for BJP's loyal voters, it doesn't matter if these are used selectively, because they see this as empowerment of their community. So this is again something that goes positively for the BJP. Even Yogi Adityanath, we saw his rally in Varanasi, in a place called Baragaon on the outskirts of Varanasi at an inter-college, Baldev Inter-College, and it was quite an incredible experience. I have not seen this before. I had thought all this while that Yogi is an extremely popular chief minister. In fact, that his popularity now rivals that of Narendra Modi, at least in the state. And this may just be something based on one experience, but it was an unusual experience, and you must talk about this, which is that it was a modest rally, about 3,500 people, towards the end of the campaign season. And as he began to speak, people began clearing out. And you can see again this video, as you can see some of the other videos that we've spoken about. You will just see glimpses of these in this special episode of CutTheClutter. But I will share the links of each one of these with you. These are all taken with my own phone. So these are not borrowed from anywhere. And you can see as he begins to speak, while he's speaking, you can hear his voice. He's speaking. See what a large number of people are walking out. In fact, he kept his speech short, just about 10-15 minutes. By the time he finished, there were not more than 1,000 people left in front of him. These 1,000 people were responding to him. Particularly, they responded when he mentioned bulldozer, the hammer, and also his charge that for Samajwadi Party, development only means raising the walls of the Kabristans. Now the wisdom earned from these travels, the wisdom learned from reading these writings on the wall, helps us do some kind of a matrix analysis. So put one set of factors on this side, one set of factors on the other. The set of factors that goes for Samajwadi Party, that go against the BJP, and by implication for Samajwadi Party are joblessness. In fact, joblessness. I could say it 3 times. Second, economic strife and helplessness. My belly is full. Okay, I get the grain, but what is the hope in my life? Caste is back. Caste had taken a backseat in 2014 and definitely in 2019. 2014, 17, 19. Caste had taken the backseat, except the upper caste for all cohesive behind the BJP. And the rest had broken rank from their old caste loyalties. Now that is back. Third, the anger over stray animals. The poorest people in UP, the poorest farmers, are paying the price for cow protection. And next, indeed, is the fear among the Muslim population, which is sizable in Uttar Pradesh. So unlikely this time that the Muslim vote will be divided that much. Now, I told you this is a matrix analysis. So what is on the other side? What's on the other side also is not something that you can just brush away. So first of all is the appeal of Modi, because almost nobody except those from the Muslim community, nobody speaks against Modi. They all seem to like Modi, which is quite remarkable. They don't like Yogi. A lot of them don't like Yogi, but they like Modi. So the first thing is Modi on the plus side. The second is law and order. Very important, particularly among those who in any case vote for the BJP, but among the Hindus by and large, other castes other than upper castes also, improvement in law and order is a positive for the BJP. Third, indeed, is Hindu nationalism, because there is that strong denominator of identity as well. Free food grain, yes, they are getting free food grain. Awas housing, which means PM Awas Yojana's money is reaching them. Toilets and doles, the money that comes into their accounts, people appreciate that and they remember that. Then there are concerns about the return of Samajwadi Party. If the Samajwadi Party comes back, their mafias will come back and they will again be selective in their application of the law. And for the majority of the state, that is the Hindu majority, if Samajwadi Party is selective with the application of the laws, that works much worse than a BJP government similarly using these laws selectively, because BJP government will end up targeting the Muslims who are a minority. Samajwadi Party, if it ends up misusing the laws, is seen to be affecting adversely the majority of Hindus. So these are the 5 or 6 factors on this side. Remember, and as I listed these factors, I didn't mention Yogi there. So if I mentioned a 6th factor, I perhaps would have added Yogi, but the fact is, the big surprise is that the appeal still is, for the BJP voters, appeal is almost primarily Narendra Modi. It's not Yogi, which for me was quite a finding, on which note I conclude this very unusual and special episode of CutTheClutter. Do tell me if you like this version, and we might do occasionally more of these in future.